All right. Today is the 5th of February. It marks 38 years to the day that Dr. Neil Aggett passed away at John Foster Square. My Lord, as a sign of respect, I request that the court agrees to observe 1 minute's silence to commemorate the death of Neil Aggett.
Yes, that is, I think that's a correct thing.
Thank you, my Lord. My Lord, Dr. Neil Aggett died so we may be free. If the court permits, perhaps we can stand for 1 minute and observe a minute's silence. Thank you, my Lord.
Yes.
My Lord, before we commence today's proceedings, I understand that my learned friend for the state, Ms. Singh, has some information in relation to the issues around obtaining the police files.
Thank you, my Lord. My Lord, as His Lordship is aware, we had previously requested the police files of the members that were involved in the subsequent arrest and interrogation surrounding Dr. Aggett. The challenge that we have been experiencing is not a new one. I personally have addressed this issue on the 15th of December 2017 as well as the 29th of December 2018 regarding access to the police files. We have been informed by counsel for the police that personnel numbers as well as identity numbers are required in order to trace the specific files. Now, my Lord, we all are aware that personnel numbers and identity numbers are not known to families or the victims involved in these matters. And we are not the employees of the South African Police Service, so I think it's a little bit, unfair to expect members of the family as well as the legal teams to have access to the files or to have access to this information. We know that the database in all government departments are arranged alphabetically. That's the first challenge that we have. We are told that unless they are personnel numbers and unless they are identity numbers, these files cannot be traced or cannot be given to us. Previously, we had in the Timor matter, we had a member of the legal services from the police seated in the court. And at that stage, no request was made for whether a first name or whether a personnel number or an identity number. In fact, these files were just flowing. And we find it quite unnerving that despite our repeated requests since 2017, 2018, and the new investigators' request to have these files placed in our possession, they have not been placed in our possession. We have undertaken with our learned colleagues for the Dr. Aggett's family to go through the inquest record and try and get a number of personnel numbers from there. And they have and will furnish it to counsel for the police. However, my Lord, this may not be always possible in future matters. And it is a real reason to, for concern, considering we are now saying that the present South African Police Service has no allegiance or no relationship with the police force. We just find it very unnerving that we are unable to gain access to these files. And on the whole basis of that, we need personnel numbers and identity numbers. My argument is very, very simple. My submission is this, my lord, that everything on all databases are arranged alphabetically. There is nothing that precludes anybody from putting a certain function into the computer, putting in a particular surname, which will uncertainly spew out all the addresses or the surnames and personnel numbers, and then we can identify in which area a police officer was living and try and get that file. We can identify the correct files. I find it, my lord, that, at this rate that we are carrying on, these files are urgent. We are going to run out of time. We are not going to have ample time to apply our minds to the matter, and it is necessary for us to find a way forward in this matter for future matters to come. I'll ask my learned friend for the police to address his lordship as well.
Yes, the court, please, my lord. Lord, as well indicated, my lord, request has been made for the files, and it has been informed to me that for the files to be forthcoming, we are, as my learned colleague has stated, we are unable to identify people by surnames. My learned colleague said it's common knowledge that the police system and database, the record keeping, works on surnames, my lord. I've been informed that in fact that is not true, and it works either on identity numbers, personnel numbers, or birth dates, my lord. It has been further been informed to me that in recent times, and as recent up to as this morning, my lord, that certain identity numbers have become available. My lord, that identity numbers will be provided to myself, and I will forward on the request. My lord, to simply say that it is common knowledge that the database works on surnames and that files will be spewing forward, my lord, that is not what is understood. My lord, with all due respect to my learned colleague here, my lord, we are receiving feedback from the people that actually works with the system. And what is required, my lord, is either, as stated, my lord, the identity numbers, the birth dates, or the personnel numbers, my lord. We have not refused at any point to provide the files. We've merely requested that once relevant information has been provided, there could be a diligent search for the files, my lord. My lord, once request is received with the relevant information being provided, such request will be made to the relevant police services, my lord. We are not trying to obstruct anything in this manner, my lord.
Are you saying to me that you are attending to the matter and that the files should be provided as soon as they're found?
My lord, what I'm saying is that, my lord, we are unable to identify files by being provided only names. My lord, we require identity numbers, personnel numbers, or birth dates. My lord, once we are provided with same, and I believe some of those details will be forthcoming today, we could make a request for the files, my lord.
From where would they be coming from?
My lord, I'll make a request to the relevant people who will then request the current police force to provide such.
No, I'm trying to find out. You're saying some information, the ID numbers will be furnished today.
Indeed, so, my lord.
Where do they come from?
I do understand that identity numbers will be provided for by the legal team for the Aggett family.
Oh, have they been able to get that?
I believe so. They are able to obtain a few.
Okay. Well, and the rest, tell me, what is the position? Isn't the police officer who is employed, who's stationed at, say, John Foster, his personal file will be there, or are they all kept at head office or at regional offices? What is the position?
My lord, I'm uncertain where to the archiving of files takes place, my lord, and where to the files are archived, my lord. And I can't find that out and liaise back with the court in that regard, my lord. What I have been explained, though, my lord, is the process of obtaining and record keeping.
Yeah.
My lord, and such process happens by means of numericals, being the three requirements I've explained to my lord, and not by surname. That's what has been explained, indeed, so, my lord.
I'm not understanding. I'm saying, if Captain Whitehead was employed at John Foster, his file would be there.
I'm uncertain to that.
Or will it be in Victoria?
My lord, I'm uncertain as to where the archiving is and where the files are actually held.
Perhaps we should first find out where do they actually keep the files.
I could indeed endeavor to do so, my lord.
Yeah.
And I will provide the court with feedback once same is provided to myself.
Yes, my lord, the challenge that we have is that this is not our first rodeo. We have been in the Tamil matter where counsel will bear me out. Counsel was there in court. We simply gave a surname and that file was made available. Therefore, this is my problem, understanding why is it that it's such a problem to get a simple file. My lord, not everybody knows an ID number, not everybody knows a personnel number. It's simple. We do it by surname. However, we hear, my learned colleague, my lord, I have requested for 3 years now standing. Simply give us a sworn affidavit to the effect that despite a diligent search with the information we have given, you are unable to find the file. And I think there is hesitance because something is not right, my lord.
And those police officers, after the term, they will still have been receiving some government pension or something like that.
My lord,
Police department will actually have their details.
my lord, I will request where the files are kept.
You will.
I will indeed so, my lord. I just believe it's a bit assumptuous to say that there's something untoward happening with regards to the request from the police files. My lord, with regards to the so-called affidavit my learned colleague presumes should be done, my lord. I have explained to the court, my lord. A second request is being in the process of being received today, which I will forward on. Once such request is made, my lord, we can then take the issue from there. To simply put the horse before the cart and say that we should call for affidavit saying that we're unable to provide files once a request has not been made, my lord, is a bit presumptuous in that extent.
Okay. Can we wait until Friday and then we'll get the report?
My lord, may extension be this is a process whereby requests will be made from department to department. May we extend the filing limit maybe till Monday or Tuesday?
Okay.
We are on Wednesday today, as it stands.
Okay. Give us a report back on Tuesday.
By
How
the
far you are and
indeed, so my lord.
thank you very much.
As the court pleases, my lord, I'd like to say one or two things on this aspect. As I understand these files, I've heard my learned friend, the investigating officer for the state, they're actually under subpoena. My lord, we will also be handing up correspondence that was forwarded to the Office of the Police Commissioner as far back as 2018, requesting these files.
2018.
2018. And I should add, my lord, that if you were to look at an arbitrary statement from Exhibit B, which contains most of the affidavit of the police officers, generally starts off with a police number, a force number. So I would implore my learned friend for the police to assist us. So when you're given a name, it's very easy. All these affidavits are online at the click of a button to obtain most of their force numbers, and I believe that our team has been providing those, and they have found some of the ID numbers. Lord, it's unclear to me why we have to wait until next Tuesday, given that that is nearly a whole week away. But if we can provide any outstanding information by today, and I would urge my team and the team for the state to do so, then I see no reason why the information can't be provided on Monday, because then they have at least 2 full days in which to do so. Okay. As the court pleases. Before we commence, I'd like to hand up certain exhibits that we'll be using today and tomorrow. And Lord, the first exhibit is the independent medico-legal report into the death of Dr. Neil Hudson Aggett. Dr. Steve R. Naidu, an independent forensic pathologist for the family. That report is dated 4 February 2020. And if the court consents, we intend to mark that report G21. Lord, the next exhibit is the affidavit of Ronald Casserols, who will be our first witness this morning in we'd like to mark that exhibit G22. My Lord, the next exhibit is the affidavit of Jabulani Gabriel Ngwenya. And we'd like to mark that affidavit G23. And then finally, my Lord, we'd like to hand up 3 photographs that we intend to refer to when we read the evidence of Mr. Ngwenya. And these 3 photographs we'd like to mark G23.1, G23.2, and G23.3. And Lord, our colleagues have been provided with all these documents. You might want to pull out G22, the affidavit of Ronald Castles, who's our first witness this morning. With the lead of the court, I'd like to call to the stand Mr. Ronald Castles.
Ronald Castles.
Do you have any objection to this oath?
I'll affirm, thank you.
Or do you affirm that you tell us truth in this oath? If so, say it.
I do.
Okay. You may proceed.
As the court pleases, Mr. Castles, firstly, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be with us this morning. If you prefer to sit down, there is a seat behind you, whatever you're comfortable with.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Castles, we don't intend to keep you very long today. We might be need to hear. We are going to be dealing really with one discrete matter, a certain document known as Inquest Freedom. But we'd just like to get down a few basic details about yourself before we ask you some questions on that document. Can you confirm your date and place of birth?
15th November 1938, Johannesburg.
And can you indicate to the court where you schooled?
King Edward 7th High School in Johannesburg.
And we'd also like you to give us some of the highlights of your very extensive career, particularly your career in politics and your involvement in the struggle against apartheid. And perhaps you could highlight positions that you have held in various organizations.
My Lord, I became politically involved in the ANC-led liberation struggle in 1960 after the Sharpeville massacre. I served as a secretary of the ANC-aligned Congress of Democrats in Natal, the then Natal. I was recruited into Umkhonto we Sizwe at its inception and played a role in the actions of Umkhonto we Sizwe from that time. I went into exile.
Just before you get to exile, with Umkhonto we Sizwe, were you a member of the Natal Regional Command?
Indeed, my Lord, I was a member of the Natal Regional Command and actually became a commander with the arrest of Kenneth Ndlovu, who was the previous commander. And that was in 1963, early 1963.
And around that time, did you also join the South African Communist Party?
I joined the South African Communist Party the following year, 1962.
And sorry, I interrupted you. You mentioned that at some point you had to leave South Africa.
I then left South Africa towards the end of 1963 on instructions to undergo military training and to evade capture by the security police.
So once you had left South Africa, did you then base yourself in Dar es Salaam?
I was based in Dar es Salaam for a couple of years. I was sent for military training to the then Soviet Union, and later sent to London to join a leadership group of the Communist Party chaired by Dr. Yusuf Dadu, the then chairperson of the Communist Party, together with Joe Slovo and Jack Hodgson, and we became a committee directing underground clandestine operations from London as an adjunct to the ANC, based in firstly Dar es Salaam and later Lusaka under Oliver Tambo.
And can you give the court a sense of what kind of underground operations you were helping to orchestrate from London?
My Lordship, there was the recruitment of South Africans basically studying in London, people such as David Rapkin and Raymond Suttner, Jeremy Cronin and others, Ahmed Timmel. They underwent training by us in terms of the clandestine activities, and also we were engaged in the organisation of the distribution of propaganda of the Communist Party and ANC from the London end of the struggle into South Africa, and some of these clandestine units participated in the distribution of such propaganda. I use the term propaganda. My Lordship, we're talking about information about the ANC Communist Party and the struggle. I think propaganda was a former term used.
And were you yourself involved in writing some of the propaganda?
Indeed, intimately, My Lordship, because I had a background as a writer. In fact, after leaving school, I was a film script writer. First at a company called Alpha Film Studios in Johannesburg, and later Lintas, the arm of Lever Brothers in Durban, again dealing with written material for television.
Thank you. And then perhaps to complete the story, at some point did you become a member of Mkhonto we Sizwe's High Command?
Yes, that's fast forward after the period of approximately 10 years, 65 to 75, 76, when I was based in London, my lord. The ANC deployed me then to Africa, and I served initially in Angola, later in Mozambique, Zambia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Swaziland. In that period, in 1983, I was appointed as Chief of Military Intelligence to the High Command of Mkhonto we Sizwe under the leadership of Joe Modise.
And subsequent to that, did you also serve on the ANC's National Executive Committee?
I was co-opted to the National Executive Committee of the ANC in 1987. I was then based in Lusaka. I later was elected to the NEC at the first national conference of the ANC in 1991.
And fast forwarding a little, can you describe some of the prominent positions you've occupied from South Africa's transition to democracy and thereafter?
If I may, my Lordship, the one position which is relevant, which I also held pre to that date was being elected to the Communist Party, South African Communist Party as it is known, in 1985. Coming then to my career and appointments post-1994, I was the Deputy Minister of Defence under Joe Modise, who was the Minister, from 94 to 99. From 99 to 2004, I was the Minister of Water Affairs and Forestry. From 2004 to 2008, I was Minister of what was then termed Intelligence Services of the government. I resigned in 2008 with the recall of the then President Mbeki.
And apparently you are retired.
I say refired. I retired formally from government, my lord, in 2008. But I am rather active socially, politically, but I'm also an author and have had published since that time 4 books basically about the struggle in South Africa.
You've certainly kept yourself busy following...
Yes, I call myself an author rather than a retired pensioner.
I was going to say following the firing. Mr. Caswells, can we now turn to this document that is titled Nkululeko Freedom Number 2, dated February 1972. A copy of that document is annexed to affidavit marked RK1. Can you just describe to the court this publication, Nkululeko Freedom? What is it and why was it published?
My lord, Nkululeko Freedom was a journal, clandestine journal, meant for the public, to be distributed to the public of South Africa. And it was first produced in 1971, if my memory serves me well, as volume 1. We're looking at, number 1, and we're now looking at number 2. But essentially, a document written by the South African Communist Party. It could be and was in fact recopied and cyclostyled by clandestine units within South Africa for distribution by mailing to members of the public, to the media, to well-known persons, and also distributed hand-to-hand and by other methods.
Thank you. Are you aware that on the 24th of February 1982, a certain Captain Karel Jacobus Adrian Victor, who was the investigating officer into the death of Neil Aggett, indicated that before the first inquest that he located this document in the security branch files and certified it?
Well, thereby hangs a tale, my lord, because the document referred to by Officer Victor, which is the document before us, is not an accurate document as published. There are inconsistencies with it, and clearly addition in the last part of this document, which was certainly not there in the document that was produced by the South African Communist Party.
Thank you, and we're going to get to that, those passages shortly. My Lord, for the record, this particular document was part of the record of the first inquest, and we refer your lordship to the affidavit of Captain Victor, which is exhibit B1.4, and we refer in particular to paragraph 13 sub 4 of Captain Victor's affidavit, in which he simply says that he went and located the document, which was then entered into the record. Mr. Caswells, were you asked to give evidence on this document before the reopened inquest into the late Ahmed Timol in 2017?
Yes, my lord.
And am I correct in saying that in the Timol inquest, the magistrate in that matter relied on this document, in Kuleleko Freedom Number 2, to bolster the false contention that Ahmed Timol had committed suicide?
Indeed, that's so.
My Lord, in argument we will be referring to the exact passages in that judgment.
Sorry, you said the magistrate misinterpreted the document.
My Lord, to be clear, we're now going to quote the parts that the magistrate relied on, and then the witness will explain how it was that the passages in question came to appear on the document. And perhaps, my Lord, if we can now refer you to the document in question, which is attached at RK1, and you'll see that it is a 7-page document. And we refer your lordship in particular to the bottom of the last page, that's page 7, the text at the bottom of the document, which has been highlighted, and the text that's under the heading "Stand Firm." Mr. Caswells, perhaps I can ask you to read the paragraph in question that we have highlighted in paragraph 14 of your affidavit. Could you read that paragraph into the record?
In the paragraph on page 7 of the document.
Yes, it appears at the bottom of, it's one of the paragraphs at the bottom of page 7 of Nkululeko Freedom Number 2. The text is quite small. We have reproduced it at Mr. Caswell's affidavit, paragraph 14.
Yes.
Thank you. Paragraph 14 reads as following, my lord. In terms of my affidavit, I say, on the last page of the document on page 7, at the bottom of the page, under the heading "Stand Firm," appears the following, and I quote, "Harass your enemy by going on hunger strike, act insane, lodge complaints, whether true or false, resort to civil and criminal actions in courts as often as possible. Make sure your complaints and actions, the oppressors, get the utmost publicity. Rather commit suicide than to betray the organization." And then it is issued by the Communist Party of South Africa at the very bottom.
Thank you, Mr. Caswells. Just one small correction. Where you read oppressors, it actually reads suppressors, although that's just a matter of semantics.
I beg your pardon, yes, that should read, "The suppressors get the utmost publicity."
Now,
In fact, sorry, I know we're going ahead of time, but exactly the way that would be written would be the oppressors, not the suppressors.
So, Mr. Caswells, let's now analyze this document. First, can you explain to the court why you are familiar with Nkululeko Freedom Number 2?
Well, Your Lordship, the committee that produced this, of the Central Committee of the South African Communist Party, for which I worked. I wasn't a member at the time, but I was on the clandestine group headed by Dr. Dadu and Joe Slovo. And we produced this, we wrote this in London. I did a lot of the writing, not all of it. A particular part of this document that I read actually is on page 4 and 5. It's not in my affidavit, but going through the affidavit last night and the Nkululeko publication here, it's the section that says the murder and torture squad. I wrote that part, and we would go very carefully through such documents, several drafts, Your Lordship, before we adopted it for publication. We would then produce it.
So Mr. Caswells, can you then confirm that bar the last 5 paragraphs under the heading "Stand Firm," that this is actually an authentic document that the SACP in fact issued and published?
There was a document, as Council mentions, bar the falsification, that last part "Stand Firm."
Right. And look, in your affidavit from paragraph 20, you helpfully provide the court with an analysis, but perhaps I can ask you to analyse for the court's benefit why you are of the view that those last 5 paragraphs constitute a falsification.
Yes, indeed, Your Lordship.
Perhaps I can start by asking you, given that rather stark statement, rather commit suicide than to betray the organisation, was it ever policy of the SACP to encourage suicide in those circumstances?
Emphatically not, Your Lordship. Emphatically not. Never, ever, at all. And no such instruction would ever have been given to our members.
You also mentioned that going to prison was not seen in a poor light by the organisation.
Well, Your Lordship, I think that the history of our struggle bears that out. Going to prison for opposing apartheid was regarded as a badge of honour. And in that sense, the way we would motivate our membership in the ANC as well as the SACP, Your Lordship, would be to regard a sentence in that light. I don't know if you want me to go through the court and the detention period at this point, but to say that we would motivate people once in prison to do as the late Walter Sisulu, Nelson Mandela and others stressed. Once in prison, make the best of it. It's going to be tough, but it's going to be possible in time perhaps to be able to study, keep fit, keep healthy as you can, because it was an article of faith with us, Your Lordship, that freedom would come and that our people would need to emerge strong, healthy, as qualified as possible from any form of prison sentence in order to contribute to a new South Africa.
And Mr. Caswells, you say that you and your colleagues would never have written words such as "act insane."
Not at all. I'll have to deal with this in 2 parts, if I may.
Please.
Firstly, it's a falsification, Your Lordship. Those such words as act insane, tell lies, and so on, we would never have written the words act insane. And in relation to such instruction, this, bear in mind, my Lord, this is a public document. This is a document, yes, that had to be written in secret, clandestinely, produced clandestinely, but it was to go out to the public, as I've explained. And once it's in the public domain, it's in the hands of the security police. It goes to the media, it goes to the public at large. And to make statements such as this would be an absolute incredulity. It would be like saying straight to the security police and the media and so on, we do tell our people to commit suicide, to tell lies, and so on. And from that point of view, this could never be the case. And that's why I can say quite boldly to the court here, my Lord, that this is incorrect.
So you would never have issued operational instructions to your activists underground in a public document?
Precisely, my Lord. That's operational, as is stated. Operational instruction about how to outwit the security police, let us say, in whatever way, would be highly secret. It would be done not in writing. It would be done in terms of the training of people. Because how on earth can we reveal openly such instruction?
You also mentioned that the use of the English language is poor, and you're going to say it's crass, and strange and prescriptive. And you give examples such as rather than to betray, and words such as paid for their lives. Why, in your view, is this language poor and crass?
Well, the English, rather than to betray, my Lord, is obviously rather than betray. And the words paid for their lives would in English be paid with their lives. And the question of translation would come in here, because any capable translator would tell you that that's the way Afrikaans would be written and would come across in those terms.
Yes. And Mr. Caswell, you'll notice that in the very last paragraph, before the signing off, at the bottom, and perhaps I'll just read it into the record. Forster and his professional murderers will not halt our people when we have comrades like Lurley Ironstein, Vernon Barange, Izzy Maisels, and MD Naidu. I think I might actually read MJ Naidu, George Bezos, Sogat, and others who have been fighting with us since the days of Ravonia. What comment do you have to make on listing public individuals who are living in South Africa?
It's clearly so false, my Lord. What we would be doing here is revealing to the security police and the public that eminent people who have to appear in court and do their service and be objective are members of an illegal organization. It's clearly put there to embarrass such individuals who were constantly standing for the defense in political cases. That is crass in the extreme. In fact, if it wasn't serious, it would be utterly laughable. It would be impossible, my lord, for any sane organization to commit such a utter folly. I would also add, although it's not as gross, but one of the members there, Roly Orenstein, a very outstanding person, I would like to say, had been expelled from the Communist Party a couple of years earlier, well, several years earlier, this is 72, in about 64. And the Communist Party would not have adopted his name in this respect. They would not have mentioned him if they were so foolish as to list people who they felt could be trusted.
Indeed, some of the authors seem to be ignorant that at least one individual, Orenstein, at least by 1972, was somewhat persona non grata within the SACP.
Not at all. I think in the realm of fact and honesty and credibility, that would be the case, because the security police had in fact charged, the courts had charged Roly Orenstein, a very eminent lawyer for the people based in Durban, previous years. They had charged him with involvement in an underground organisation which wasn't Communist Party, and they knew he had been expelled. But you see, this particular piece, I would say, given all the anomalies, shows ineptitude in the extreme.
And you say it's no coincidence that the reference to suicide appears at the very bottom of the last page of the document.
I do indeed, my lord, because that's the easiest part, to slip in any additions to an authentic document. This last part, understand firm, the 5 paragraphs.
And have you heard of the tactic of the security branch in those days to alter and fabricate documents?
I think this was well proven right through the period, that the apartheid regime, whether the information service, whether the military defense, SADF, and its intelligence service, and the apartheid security police, right through, and particularly this period, were involved over and over again with falsification and lies in their publicity, their propaganda.
Now, Mr. Cashwells, I can tell you that unlike the Timol inquest, where the document featured and was relied upon in the judgment, in the Aggett inquest it was actually excluded. Essentially because it was found that there was no proof as to its authenticity. I see you do note in your affidavit that Magistrate Kotzer was the prosecutor in the first inquest, and that perhaps he was alerted to its dubious nature. But what does it say to you that this is one of the first steps that the investigating officer in the Aggett matter decided to do? One of the first things he decided to do was go and uplift this particular document. What does it say about their modus operandi?
Well, exactly as was the case in the Timol murder, this became their modus operandi. It had become extremely embarrassing, my lord, for the apartheid regime and its torture and murder squad, as referred to in the earlier part of this document. to have to explain the many, many deaths in detention. And what they did was what other fascist regimes had done, from the Portuguese to the French, which was supposed to be a democracy, by the way, but in their repression of the Algerian struggle was the projection of deaths in detention as being suicide or accident, such as slipping on a bar of soap. But suicide became the preferred way of explaining these absolute murderous deaths of people in detention.
And you seem to underline that by describing this particular document, Nkululeko Freedom, as the security branch's go-to document, given that it features in both Timol and Aggett.
Precisely, my lord, a go-to document. This was your first line of attempt to deflect the fact that you had been involved in the most terrible interrogation, torture, and subsequent death in detention of detainees.
Thank you, Mr. Cashels. Is there anything further you wish to add?
Yes, there is one additional very clear revelation about the falseness of the document, Your Worship, and why it had to be slipped in at the end. Understand firm the 5 paragraphs. The document would have ended with issued by the South African Communist Party, SACP. It's got here issued by the Communist Party of South Africa, if you see the bottom of page 7, my lord. And this question, my lord, isn't a mere issue of semantics. It is extremely important to anyone who had any knowledge of the Communist Party. Communist Party of South Africa, my lord, was established in 1921. Legal organisation, subsequently banned by the apartheid regime in 1950. It was banned and it dissolved itself shortly thereafter. For 3 years there was no Communist Party in South Africa. By 1953, my lord, certain key leaders of that former Communist Party, such as Dr. Joseph Dadu, Ron Fisher, Michael Hamel, and Joe Slovo, Ruth First, Rusty Bernstein, Hilda Bernstein, organized a new Communist Party. And to distinguish this party from the previous CPSA, Communist Party South Africa, it was renamed South African Communist Party. The name it has borne from 1953 to this day. The party, my lord, was absolutely insidious, in making every member understand its history and the fact why the party from 1953 and in legality today is called South African Communist Party. It's not just a mere question of turning a name around, and the fact that that doesn't matter at all, it's the same. Of course it's a continuation, but it was there to make this very key point about the history. No one producing the document of the Communist Party, South African Communist Party, would ever make such an error. That is the most obvious giveaway, my lord, when one first looked at the document, because obviously stand firm, there are 5 paragraphs and then issued by the Communist Party of South Africa. You would immediately be really startled, my lord, given what I've just said. I can say that with fullest conviction. So my view is that the security police, in the same way that they had rushed to produce this document at the time of the murder of the late martyr Arthur Timmel, had made major errors and continue to do so in terms of the crassness of the errors that I've referred to. And if I may, without question, why crassness, my lord? Because apartheid was a crass, arrogant, authoritarian, racist regime. And the people who were in power, as well as their foot soldiers, no matter how powerful some of those foot soldiers were utterly arrogant. And that's my motivation and explanation of how I view the document, my lord.
So that is such a glaring error that the kind of mistake that you as party activists and stalwarts would never have made in writing a publication such as this.
Utterly impossible. Utterly impossible.
And talking of crassness, Mr. Casserols, perhaps I can offer you another example of such crassness. That document was published in February 1972, some 3 months after Ahmed Timal's death in detention, and yet the magistrate still said that because Mr. Timal was involved in distributing this document, which he couldn't have done at that time, but he relied on it in taking the action that he did.
Exactly, my lord.
Anything further to add?
My lord, I think that I've said sufficient, certainly hoping that I've clarified the aspects for you, my lord.
No further questions.
Thank you, my lord. Mr. Casserols, you have called publicly for access to files at archives, am I correct?
Yes, indeed.
Can you tell us what archives is for the benefit of everyone here, and why you have called for access to archives?
Well, an archive, my lord, I think the word is evident, is the record of documentation and additional items, whether tape recordings or film, videos, etc., which are kept safely in perpetuity by any organisation, be it a golf club, a sports association, or the state at whatever level, and particularly the state. Of course, universities as well. Without archives, without access to archives, there is no knowledge, there is no recourse to checking what has happened in the past. And in fact, a society without adequate archival security and access is a society without any memory.
Now, the reason why I'm asking this, Mr. Casserols, is that in 4 years' time we celebrate 30 years of our democracy. Are we battling to get access to archives? Is that why you are asking for access to archives?
Oh yes, I am aware, of course.
Yes.
I think this is something that, as a person who has given all my adult life to a struggle for the freedom and democracy, the non-racism, the gender equality and so on, and the openness, the transparency of our actions, I am very disappointed.
Would I be correct to say that an issue that has been raised is regarding the declassification of documents? Is that the reason why people are not allowed access to their files, in particular detainees, political files, activists, etc.?
Well, I think that's true. That's a key reason.
Yes.
And that's why when I was a Minister of Intelligence, my lord, today the particular Department of State Security, I had attempted to move in the latter days of my tenure as Minister to reform that particular act, which was an old apartheid act, and was extremely closed, where so much was under lock and key, so to say.
And one battles to understand how almost 30 years into our democracy, why are there secrets? Am I correct?
That's for our country to decide. I've made it clear that I think it is absolutely wrong. Of course, in any democratic society, there is an area where classification of particular secrets is maintained, but this should be in very clear-cut terms and regulations. We've heard, for instance, my Lord, of the 30-year Act in countries such as Britain and many others, and we know that every 30 years the control, the classification is lifted. There might be some specific documents that aren't. Those documents have to be really a threat and a danger to public security, not state security, by the way, in a real democracy, because that's often used as an excuse. We serve the public, and it should be public security.
Yes, and files that public ought to have access to. That is important for finding out what happened to their loved ones. Should be accessible to their families, am I correct?
It should be, without any question whatsoever.
Thank you, Mr. Castle. Nothing further for this witness, my Lord.
Thank you, my Lord. Mr. Casuals, I've got no questions for you. Thank you, sir.
Lord, my Lord.
Re-examination.
Nothing in re-examination, my Lord.
Mr. Custis, thank you very much.
Thank you, my Lord.
My Lord, the next witness is outside court. We're just summoning him inside. The next witness is Mr. Mahano Gerden Maketa. My Lord, my lady junior, Mr. Scott, will be leading this witness.
Please the court, my lord.
There's a lot insulting.
Mtwafeletseni isibani
Mohammed Jadi Mahata.
naluthatha wankakana no-objection taken that the staff court for kanuyabo for the considered oath binding on my conscience. Can I have a passport to go and need to fill it in and how do I get into the model? Witness to the solemn.
Today, Mr. Maketa, thank you for testifying in this inquest. As will become apparent, this is obviously a tremendous importance in changing something that was done in the past.
Understand?
Mr. Maketa, you provided us with an affidavit dated the 9th of July 2018. My Lord, it's been entered in as Exhibit G6. Would you affirm the contents of that affidavit?
In July 2018. That's correct.
Do you have a copy of that affidavit with you?
Yes, I'm in possession of one.
We may make reference to this, Mr. Maketa, so if you could just get it available to you. Mr. Maketa, you are a retired officer formerly employed by the South African Police.
That's correct.
When did you retire?
What did you do in February 94?
28 February 1994.
And you first applied to join the security branch in 1979.
That's correct.
How did you come about to work for or work at John Foster Square?
What is wrong here was in Zaman from Foster Square? I heard that there's a position available at that particular place. And then I went there to apply.
And then what happened after that?
From there I worked on the 10th floor.
Can you please describe your experience of first arriving at John Foster?
Actually, first.
When I arrived at John Foster, I went to the 9th floor. When I arrived there on the 9th floor, they made me sign a particular form. On that particular form, it was written that everything that occurs at that particular place was a secret. And then I continued to sign that form.
Where did you go to next?
From there, I was then taken to the 10th floor where I was working.
Who was there?
The person who was in charge there on the 10th floor was Major, right?
Can you just describe the route you took from the entrance of the house to get to the 10th floor?
I entered into the lift on the ground floor. When you enter into the garage, there's a lift that takes you to the 10th floor.
Is this the same lift you pointed out at the inspection and notified?
That's correct.
And it goes straight to the 9th and 10th floor?
Lift in here for 9th floor, 10th floor. It starts on the ground floor, then goes to the 9th floor, then after it can go to the 10th floor.
And who is allowed to use that lift?
It was only the police officers of security branch.
So Maketa, you said you were then taken to Captain Conrad.
Captain Conrad.
Major
It is
Conrad.
Major Conrad.
What was your impression of Major Conrad?
He was a quiet person.
Quiet person. Did you report to any black officers?
I was reporting to Lieutenant Mahoro on the 10th floor.
And were there any other black officers you reported to?
Lieutenant Zada was on the ground floor. Ground floor, man. I was working with Lieutenant Mahoro on the 10th floor.
By ground floor, do you mean the second floor?
Or the ground floor was
Yes.
correct.
With
The
the
second
cells?
floor. Or the cellar.
The city.
No, not in the cells.
No city. People got control. How can I position it for interesting?
You wish to show you the sketch?
Is he looking for the
program
plot link?
on this reviews.
It is photos, my lord. I see here.
Okay, ma'am.
When you enter here, and what is depicted? What's the number
Let's see,
at the
let's
bottom of the
see.
page? Entrance to JVS.
There's a small number at the bottom.
Is photo 25.
Judge, the witness is showing us a page from the inspection and local program. Judge, by way of update, my attorneys have again just followed up with counsel to comment on the program, but hopefully we'll be able to enter it informally as an exhibit early next week.